What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I'm going to be reviewing Ghostwire Tokyo. This will be my full review. I'm not going to, obviously, talk about any spoilers, so we won't talk about, massive story elements of it, but I want to talk about this game, and look, I'll kind of boil it down right away. I really enjoyed this game. I did. I really liked it. And at the same time, I think this game is pretty heavily flawed. And I also think, just like I said in my preview that we did, a week ago, I still believe this game is obviously not for everybody. If you had massive questions about it, if you were concerned, if you were saying, this doesn't look like the game for me, it probably isn't. And I truly, at my core, I believe that's okay. Okay, now I also should say, by the way, and this should be obvious, I guess, right? But they did provide me a code, so I do want to thank Bethesda for doing that. A little bit of statistics here. I played this game 17 and a half hours. Now, that's a thing that I do think is kind of important to talk about, at least just for a little bit, because people always ask about game lengths, and obviously there's talk about, value, or how long is the game, how long does it take to play the game, beat the game, do everything, versus how much do I have to put in to play it. Well, to me, the game took 17 and a half hours, and I did almost everything. I'm not max level. I have not unlocked all of the skills, which you would need, to level up all the way to probably do that. And I haven't done every collectible in this game, but I did every single shrine, I did every single side mission, I did every single main mission. So I would say I probably did around 75 to 80% of the game, and it took me 17 and a half hours. I didn't rush. I took my time. They actually gave us reviewers plenty of time to play this game, so there was no, rushing through it at all. And again, I think overall, I would sum it up by saying I was actually pretty impressed overall with this game. The combat is phenomenal. I love it. I love that it can be as detailed as you want it to be, as well as really kind of mindlessly attacking. You could very well, and actually I did for the most part, I did kind of a blend. I played mainly just with the 3 elemental powers: fire, wind, water. You have other weapons, and you have other things you can, obviously there's also stealth too, and there's different ways of, approaching things, but I mainly took at this game in just a very simple, attack heavy perspective. I just went in there, I would attack. I did use stealth from time to time, and I will say, actually, in a weakness of this game, one reason I didn't use stealth is the enemies are incredibly weird. On the good side, they're fun to fight. There is enough, I think, diversity in them where you have to change up your playstyle to take certain ones out, okay? They're scary. I like the way that they look. I like the way that they kind of run up to you, like, all good. But in terms of their smarts, in terms of, like, how they're programmed, this is one of the most frustrating stealth games I've ever played. The game actually is hard. I played this game on normal. There's 4 difficulties. I only played on the second. I played on the second easiest. There's 2 more harder ones, and it's pretty difficult. I died plenty of times. The enemies do a lot of damage to you, basically, is the main thing. But the enemies, in terms of their environmental awareness, is like off the charts, and it's too off the charts in my opinion. Enemies have very weird walking patterns. They turn at really weird angles. Sometimes you could walk up to them. You know how in some games you can honestly kind of, cheese it, where you kind of come in from sideways. You come in like, where you could probably see yourself out of a peripheral vision, but, you're coming at it literally sideways from them. In this game, that sometimes works, and it sometimes doesn't work. Also, in some games, when you're walking around, as long as you're not walking in kind of this invisible bubble that like the enemies can hear you, you're good. You can walk around. You could even run around. In this game, if you're not crouched, even if you're like 50 feet away from these enemies, if you're not crouching, they will see you immediately. Also, there's an incredibly small window, just like a lot of games, right? Or I guess this element in games, say like Horizon, when an enemy sees you and there's like, they have to question whether they saw you, they have to come to investigate. This game, there is none of that. The enemy somewhat notices you, and probably within 3 seconds, you probably have a 3-second window to hide. If you don't do it in that 3-second window, and I'm serious, it's a very short window, they immediately go attack mode and they get you. So there's no, again, like, I just think stealth is very hard to do in this game. Now, that was a long time spent on that, but that is an element I didn't like. Another element I didn't necessarily like was the stiffness. I mean, at some point, I came to accept it. The game is what it is. Like, the entire game is in Japanese, so you have to read the English subtitles. It is what it is. You either accept it or you don't, and it's totally cool either way, okay? I did accept it, and I thought I had a lot of fun with it. But, you know, there are some things like the stiffness when you're moving, when you're jumping, when you're turning, when you're aiming. Very, very stiff. And some of that I got used to over time, mainly the fighting. Some of it I didn't get used to over time, which was a lot of the more parkouring. There's like, you know, there's actually elements of this game where you have to kind of jump up buildings and jump up different things. It's very messy, in my opinion. That element of the game is very messy. But I will say this. The game, like, that stuff is a problem, and that's why, like, I don't give review scores, but if I did, I could never give this game a perfect score because those are just flat-out elements I did not like, and I don't think they were thought over very well. There are a lot of repetitious elements in this game. Enemies, like I said, there is enough, but you end up fighting the same ones over and over after maybe 3, 4, 5 hours into the game. You end up, you know, you've seen everything there is to see except for bosses, okay? Like main bosses, and there's actually not that many of them. So you have that element. But on the flip side, and I said this in the preview, the strongest elements of this game really stand out. The visual aesthetic, it's not the prettiest game of all time. It's not, but in terms of what they were going for, I think they nailed it. This kind of, well, I don't want to use the word ghost because it's in the, but literally, it's like a ghost town of Tokyo is a really cool concept. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's eerie. It's like everything's gone. Also, the sound in this game is incredibly good because, again, you're alone, and I mean, you have dialogue, and there are other characters in a way, but like a lot of this game, you are alone, and you're going through this city. And again, like the whole atmosphere or, you know, environmental kind of storytelling is like everybody's gone, but there's spirits still there, right? So you hear people talking, which is actually kind of scary, and I actually like that. Like it's a weird kind of like eeriness to it, right? Where you're just walking down these streets and you'll hear like these ghosts or these phantoms of these people just kind of talk, and sometimes it'll be very depressing. I don't even remember like word for word, but some of them have said like, what have I even done with my life or stuff like that. So like there'll be like kind of depressing, you know, dialogue that's just going on as you go out through the game. I love that. The story, the base story, I think is actually really good, much like you'd probably expect. Like I think people going to Ghostwire Tokyo, there's a lot of roughness around the edges, but I think you probably generally think that the game story is going to be good. It is. I think it's a very good story, not even just a good one. It's a very good story. The villain, I have some slight problems with. I actually like his motivation quite a bit. I think they made him, you know, it's one of those things where it's like the villain is not that far off from the hero, or you can tell why the villain is doing what they're doing. That's this, okay? So I really like that. I would say, though, they just didn't make him very intimidating. His mask is cool. Like, you know, the visuals of him are really cool, and his lackeys, they're really cool. But in terms of, like, how powerful he is or him kind of standing in your way all that much, they don't really do it. So I never really felt scared of him, you know what I mean? Or even, I guess, maybe intimidated, just the way the game played out. But I would say that. So I really like the story, but I guess the villain, the main villain, I wouldn't say fell flat. I just thought wasn't as strong as it could be. I think the main characters of this game are incredibly, incredibly good. I love their dynamic with each other. Fantastic. You know what I mean? The gameplay, as I said, and again, I mean, I said this a few minutes ago, while I really didn't do all that much experimenting with fighting. I used the 3 elements. You can charge them, right? So you can kind of do almost a second ability with them. I did that. And I changed up my playstyle depending on the enemies, but I didn't do anything like radically crazy, right? I didn't actually use even all of the weapons that were given to me, but I still had a blast every single time. Like, there's just something to hitting these enemies, and then when they're weak enough, grabbing their cores, right? You've probably seen that in the gameplay, where you can either physically grab them, like run up to them and grab them, or you can use that like rope thing, right? I like that a lot. And for the side missions, and this will probably be the final thing I say, and this is kind of odd, right? Because one of the things that actually was promoted with this game is that the side missions are not repetitive. And that's half right. The side missions are incredibly repetitive in terms of what... And I guess, again, this isn't necessarily a negative. I'm just kind of laughing at the idea that they, you know what I mean, that they think it's not repetitive. You do the same thing generally in a couple of these side missions. There's patterns. So you're either looking for something, or you're following footprints to go somewhere to then face a group of enemies, or you're teleported into the kind of like this phantom realm, like this third dimension, and you have to fight like a wave of enemies, right? It's those. Like, that's kind of the end goal of most of the side missions. They are all unique, and that's the thing I want to give them credit for. In terms of storytelling and the kind of Japanese kind of like ritualistic stories that are being told through these through these characters are incredibly good. They are all completely different. So I love that. I love that they're trying to tell all of this different kind of mythology, right? Or all these, again, kind of these different fairy tales or just stories that are actually told in that culture. Loved it. And again, like, those are each individually different, and I like that quite a bit. So, like I said, this is not, in my opinion, like one of those games that I just love constantly and like I have nothing negative to say about it, right? This is just flat out a game that has problems. It is, and it's okay, you know what I mean? This was never a game, and in fact, I said that going into this game, and I'm actually kind of, I'm impressed. I'm also kind of like okay with, I went in, and I told you guys this in past videos, even before I got the code, right? I'd never made anything up. Before I got the code, I was thinking, this seems like a game that could be uneven. I don't know how to feel about it. The combat does look cool, looks interesting, but I don't know anything about the story. I don't really know what to feel about it. And the answer, once you play it, is this is a game for a specific group of people. The open world is big. There's plenty to do. I think 17.5 hours, by the way, is fine. I don't need every game to be 50. I don't need every game to be 100. I just said that, though, because I know some people, 17 hours, not long enough. I need 400 hours. I get that. I get that. So that's just kind of what I wanted to say out loud. I personally felt 17.5 is perfect for... And I think you could stretch it, right? I don't think that's the be-all, end-all, number. But I think this game is kind of perfect in its length in that you don't get... They don't overstay its welcome. The story definitely doesn't. The story is actually pretty quick. If you only did story missions, I'd imagine the game's only 5-6 hours. The game's really not that long. And I think that's okay because, again, the story doesn't need to stretch a massive length. So I think the timing of the length of the game is great. I think the story was really good. Really actually kind of surprised me at how good it was and how connected I was to these characters. Even though it's a different, I mean, it's weird. This game is weird. This game is wacky. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but it was mine. The gameplay is phenomenal. It's definitely the shining star of it. Again, there's some enemy problems to it. There's some repetitive problems to it. There's some like jankiness or like stiffness to it. There are definitely issues. So it's what I said in the beginning of this video. It's what I said last week. If this is a game that you flat out, thought wasn't your thing, there's no way this game changes your mind. The full game. Like the game is that. If this was a game that you were looking at and saying, I don't know, I kind of question this and this, but you know what? I've liked so far this element and this element. I actually think the game may very well be for you because that was kind of me. I was like that. I questioned some things and I was into other things and I ended up actually really loving it, okay? And then if you were one that was, I'm in, I bought it day one, well, you already know the answer. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I can definitely answer questions. I know I said that in the preview video. If you guys have any questions that I didn't answer in this video, I'm more than happy to, respond to your comments. I don't think I can give spoilers and talk about like certain things, but I can do other things. So let me know if you have any questions about the game and we can go from there. There will be more Ghostwire Tokyo videos up over the coming days, kind of like help videos about powers and skills and stuff. I got some videos planned there, so make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, all that good stuff. If you want to follow me anywhere else, all my social media is in the description below, okay? Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all on the next video.